Well, Laura Knudsen, working at Mayo Clinic Health System in Eau Claire. We'll be talking about sports nutrition today. All right, so these are the highlights we'll kind of go through. We're going to talk about having an eating routine, how important it is to fuel well all day long. I know a lot of times in high school, people always ask me what that best pregame meal is. So we'll kind of go over fueling well all day long, including quality foods in your diet. As an athlete, I know you usually have a few more extra calories that you're allowed to eat because you're so active. But for a good performance, we'll talk about some of those quality foods. And for those of you that are competitive athletes trying to perform for your performance, using that recovery window after your workouts, the importance of hydrating properly, and another common sports nutrition question I always get is supplements. So we'll talk about using supplements wisely and how to go about choosing those. Any questions along the way, definitely ask. As far as having an eating routine, as an athlete, I think it's important that you eat every 3 to 4 hours and to plan that in ahead of time rather than just flying by the seat of your pants. If possible, try to eat at similar times throughout the day. Be very wary of bottom-heavy diets. I know I see this a lot with high school athletes as well as college athletes, probably even us as Americans in general. We tend to maybe skip breakfast, eat maybe a small lunch, and then eat a lot for supper after practice because you're so hungry. And I think that as an athlete, if you're trying to get the most out of your workouts, that you need that fuel on board ahead of time. So being very wary, you should probably get about 2/3 of your calories in before your practice if you're practicing in the afternoon after school is out. So just being wary not to, eat a big supper, eat your snacks, and just doing everything late in the day. I think that it's important as an athlete that you eat 5 to 6 times a day. Rather than just 3 big meals, I think that you need to have those constant snippets in that way. Second bullet point, fueling well all day long. I know also as a previous coach, big pet peeve of mine was when someone would come to practice, hadn't eaten well, all day, and then they were wondering why their workouts aren't going so well. And it's like you need to make sure that you have that fuel on board so you can maximize your practice time or your game or whatever it is you're trying to perform well at. So fueling well all day, starting with breakfast in the morning, eating those snacks throughout the day, eating a good lunch. So fueling well all day. We get calories from 3 main sources. We need those carbohydrates, fats, and protein, and we need all of those in our diets to perform well. Carbohydrates, and we'll kind of get in that when we talk about those quality foods, but carbohydrates are that main source of energy when you're working out. They give us those muscle glycogen stores. And for the type of athlete you are, basically the longer you're exercising, so probably like those longer cross-country runners or anyone that's more of an aerobic type athlete, you're going to need more carbohydrates than someone that's a very short activity sport. So carbohydrates, I think the longer you go, the more carbohydrates you need. Protein, another important source that we need for energy. Protein is essential for building your muscles and repairing tissues. So when you damage your muscles when you're working out, and that's what kind of ultimately helps you build those, you need that protein in your diet. And you also need fat in your diet. I know sometimes people are afraid of fat because they don't want to get fat and they're kind of nervous, of what's a good balance. We need fats in our diet. Fats can give us those essential fatty acids, and they also help us absorb certain vitamins. So we certainly need some fats. We just want to make sure we're getting the right kinds of fat. And we'll talk about that again with those quality foods. So make sure you're fueling well all day long, not just that one meal before your practice or that one meal before your game. You need to do it all day long, even preferably every day and throughout your season. So quality foods, we're going to talk about the 3 main sources of energy. So we'll talk about carbohydrates, protein, and fat. You want to make sure that you're getting the right kinds of each of those. So carbohydrate-wise, you certainly need carbohydrates for optimal performance as an athlete. Carbohydrates give you that muscle glycogen. So when you're working out and you need to use those carbohydrates, they give you your muscle glycogen. They also give you your blood glucose, which is in your blood. So you need those carbohydrates so that you can do your exercise. Carbohydrates are the main source for pretty much any sport that you're playing. You need those carbohydrates. Carbohydrates also serve as a good source of fiber, which is important for our health, as well as vitamins and minerals, so important for health aside from performance. I will say that if you have a diet that's kind of chronically low in carbohydrates, you're basically, I would say, things that I kind of look for if someone's getting stale throughout the season. As a previous coach, I know that if someone's getting poor performances as the season goes on and they're just like, they're working out hard, they're doing those workouts, but their performances are kind of just getting stale, this might be an area I'll kind of look at. Are they getting enough carbohydrates in their diet? Are they getting fatigued early in workouts? So you're maybe doing good for the first half of practice, but as the practice goes on, they're kind of, puttering out. Are you getting sluggish? Are you getting sick all the time? Dehydrated, muscle soreness, increased injury. So those are kind of things I'll kind of look for if your diet's always low in carbohydrates. At the same time, you can also get too many carbohydrates in your diet. If your diet's way too high in carbohydrates, you'll certainly maybe be gaining some weight that you didn't want to gain, getting some extra body fat on board that you maybe didn't want. And you can also get deficiencies in other important nutrients. So if your diet's really high in carbohydrates and it's more than you need, you may be cutting out some protein that you need in your diet. Or you might be cutting out some iron that you need in your diet because you're kind of getting those too many carbohydrates. So we want a good balance. But definitely choosing the good carbohydrates are better. So when I say good carbohydrates, mainly I'm thinking about whole grain foods, fruits, vegetables, low-fat milk, yogurt, most of the time. There certainly is a time and a place for those quick-acting carbohydrates. So whether it's when they say chocolate milk as being a recovery food or juices and some of that type of thing, those would be appropriate for during the exercise if you're doing, or right after when you're trying to recover. But generally speaking, good wholesome foods. As far as protein goes, we want to make sure that your needs as an athlete are generally higher than the general public, but I will also say that most athletes get more than enough protein on their own without needing to use supplements. General rule of thumb, if somebody is working out like moderately or for fitness, I think they need about 0.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So if I weigh 150 pounds and I'm just working out for fitness and I'm kind of have the moderate part training in my season, that means I would need about 75 grams of protein per day. If I'm maybe a football player and I really want to gain a lot of muscles and I'm in the muscle building part of my season and I'm real concerned, I want to make sure I'm getting enough protein, I would say the max that I've seen like research supports is about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if I weighed 150 pounds and I'm trying to build lots of muscle, the most that you would ever need is 150 grams of protein. You wouldn't need more than 1 gram per pound of body weight in a day. And then as far as fats go, like I said, you need fats in your diet. We just want the right kinds. The fats that we need are generally the mono and polyunsaturated fats. So when I'm thinking about those kind of fats, we're thinking about, we want canola oil, olive oil, nuts, whether it's walnuts, almonds, avocados, olives. We want to get those healthy fats rather than those from butter or more saturated fats, so animal meats that are just very fatty. So we want to make sure we're getting those healthy fats in our diet. Generally speaking, we want fat to make up about 20 to 35% of our calories. I would say maybe even most athletes are in that 20 to 30% of your calorie range. So if I'm maybe a smaller athlete that's not eating a lot of calories, or I'm just kind of working out for fitness, that means I maybe need to get 300, and if I'm eating 1,800 calories a day, and my calorie range is that 20 to 35%, I would maybe only need 360 to 630 calories from fat. Where if I'm like a very active athlete, I'm competing, I might need up to 3,000 calories a day or even more. But for example, if you need 3,000 calories a day, you would probably need in the ballpark of 600 to like 1,000 calories from fat to be getting a healthy amount to either keep you full, keep you healthy in that respect. For those of you that are competing and trying to perform for your performance, utilizing that recovery window after workouts can be very beneficial. If you are somebody that's working out just for fitness, this is not necessary. This is designed for those that are competitive athletes or someone that's working out hard multiple days in a row. If you have a tournament, so if let's say you have a basketball tournament and you have like games every couple hours, this would be important. If you're trying to recover quickly because you have maybe a morning practice the next day, this is when you want to use that recovery window. Basically what the recovery window is that like 30 minutes right after you have a good hard workout, your body is ready to absorb extra nutrients and kind of help, because your blood's flowing a little bit more, you get more insulin on board, you can definitely recover faster. And you basically would use fluids. You want to make sure you get enough fluid. Generally, rule of thumb, you want 24 to 32 ounces of fluid. So basically 3 to 4 cups of fluids after practice, because you were probably sweating pretty heavy during practice and you lost a lot of liquids that way. You also want to make sure that you're getting carbohydrates, basically because you just burned all your blood glucose and you depleted some of your glycogen stores. You want to keep those rebuilding, and you have that window of opportunity right after that hard workout. So general rule of thumb, you want 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrates. I would say most dependent on your body size. So if you're maybe a smaller person, you probably need closer to those 50 grams. Where someone that's maybe a larger athlete, you might need closer to that 100 grams. And this is assuming you had a hard workout, not just your regular easy practice or an average practice. You want to get some protein. That protein can certainly help. General rule of thumb for the amount of protein that you need is 10 to 25 grams of protein after that hard workout. And you want to repeat this for every 2 hours for the next 4 hours. So essentially you're doing this 3 times. You're doing it that first time right after practice, and then in 2 hours you'll do that again. Usually it's with maybe a meal, if you can eat your supper, if you have your meal that you can actually eat, and then you would do that refueling thing that 3rd time. So that way maybe that next morning when you have that morning practice coming up, you're able to be as much recovered as you can be. Let's see here. Hydrating properly. I always like to make sure I address this with athletes. This is usually the number one problem that I see, like as a coach, is like if somebody's got maybe a stale practice or they're not performing very well, this is always that first line that I try to make sure that they're doing. This is by far, I'd say, the number one issue that I run across. Because basically if someone's dehydrated, they're going to have a decreased concentration. So if you have a sport that's pretty technical and you have to pay attention to plays and you're trying to do things, you have less concentration. So you want to make sure you're able to concentrate well. And then you also have decreased performance throughout your whole practice. And I would say a number of athletes come to practice dehydrated. So basically you're behind the ball to start with if you're coming to practice dehydrated before you even start. And it's even possible to kind of get chronically dehydrated throughout the season. So maybe you're fine for the first week or two, and then as the season goes on, so maybe 3 to 4 weeks into your season, you're just kind of not performing well, and you've just kind of become chronically dehydrated over the past few weeks. So definitely putting an effort on staying properly hydrated. Usually tips I'll give people is make sure you start drinking fluids right away in the morning. When you wake up, usually about 2 cups, I'm like, just get some water and kind of start drinking some fluids right away. Carry fluids with you throughout the day. So when you're in your classes or throughout the day, if you can just kind of have a water bottle available so you can sip on it, that can definitely help you stay hydrated. I think that it's important to have a hydration plan. So let's say you kind of figure out, like, I need to make sure I drink this water bottle before lunch. I need to make sure I drink these 2 water bottles before practice this afternoon to make sure I'm drinking enough before I even get to practice or your game. You want to make sure you kind of monitor your urine color. It should be a light color, more like lemonade color. If it's darker, more apple juice color, then you're probably dehydrated. You also want to make sure you have enough volume, so you should maybe be going to the bathroom every 2-3 hours rather than, if you didn't go all day, then you're probably dehydrated. You don't have enough urine. And if you want to get real critical or just kind of monitor it once in a while, I have had athletes weigh themselves before practice in kind of a little bit less clothes, so that way when you weigh yourself after practice, you don't want to have your sweaty clothes on or you can't tell how much you actually lost. But if you weighed yourself before and after practice and you lost, let's say, 2 or 3 pounds, let's say you lost 2 pounds, you want to make sure you drink 16 to 24 ounces of liquid for each pound. So you're basically going to drink about 2 to 3 cups of fluids for every pound that you lost. So if you lost 2 pounds, you need to make sure you're drinking 4 to 6 cups of liquids to replace that you just lost, because it was all that liquids from practice. So I think it's kind of fun to do if you know you're going to have a hard workout and you just want to kind of see how much weight you lose during just sweating. It can definitely help you keep track of that very well. Sports drinks, people a lot of times will ask me, do I do sports drinks like Gatorade or Powerade, or do I just use water? General rule of thumb, if you're going to be working out continuously for over an hour, then generally you want to use a sports drink like Gatorade or Powerade. And I think of like a continuous workout, not if you're going to stop and go and it's, have a lot walk through parts, water might be just fine. But if you're working out very hard and it's going to last for well over an hour, then you probably want to think about using a sports drink to kind of give you those carbohydrates. Sports drinks are also kind of unique. They have like salt in it to replace if you're kind of a salty sweater. They have potassium in it. They have carbohydrates. And that salt in it actually makes you more thirsty. So for some of you that maybe have drank Gatorade before and you're like, if I drink Gatorade, I get more thirsty than if I just drink water. And it's designed that way to hopefully keep you more hydrated as you're working out so you don't get so dehydrated. So they're definitely designed that way. And then the last part is like using supplements wisely. I will say the supplement industry is a huge industry, and they certainly make lots of claims that appeal to you as athletes. I think that you want to make sure that you do your research before you just start taking the first thing that you can on the market. I think as an athlete, you want to make sure you focus on your training, so your practices, your weightlifting, whatever your training is, and your nutrition first before you consider supplements. And if you still want to consider supplements, you need to consider them in addition to your training and your good nutrition, not a replacement for. So definitely when you're thinking about supplements, to kind of do your research that way. It's also important to make sure that you probably talk to your coach or your athletic trainer or like a sports dietitian to make sure that they're legal, that they're safe for you to take, because many supplements are not very safe. They can get dehydrated, and some people have even unfortunately died during practice because they maybe became too dehydrated, or they didn't take them in the right amounts as prescribed by they recommend on the label. So, and you also want to kind of make sure they're like proven to work, or as proven as they can be, rather than just kind of a gimmick. Generally speaking, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So. Supplements are certainly not going to make you a better athlete. Where good training and good sound nutrition and hard work will certainly get you a lot further than a supplement will take you. There is a website that the WIAA has that shows what supplements are legal and not legal, and preferred and not preferred. So if you even Googled like the Wisconsin WIAA supplements, I'm sure you could find their link so that you can make sure that if you are taking a supplement, you can even do some of your own research to make sure that it's approved that way. Any questions?
Yeah, if you can restate the question for the mic so it can speak up.
Yep.
When you're talking about that recovery window, you kind of talked about sizes or ounces of intake. Could you actually give some examples, some portion sizes? So, what is 2 ounces? What does that look like as far as a food item and how much?
Yeah. All right. The question was, when you're talking about that, when we talk about that recovery window, and we want to make sure that you're getting, let's say, the fluids, the right carbohydrates, the right protein, what are some examples of those foods? I would say, as far as the fluids go, the 2 to 3 cups, I know a lot of times the water bottles that I see most often are 3 to 4 cup water bottles. Basically, you want to drink that whole water bottle worth of fluids. I think it can definitely be beneficial if you have it as Gatorade or a Powerade, because you're getting those carbohydrates in there. So let's say 4 cups of fluids, and let's say it was Gatorade, would probably be about 60 grams of carbohydrates. So you're basically meeting your carbohydrate need if you drank 4 cups of Gatorade. and you're meeting your fluids needs. The only part you're deficient in then is that protein part, which I always tell athletes, if you get that protein, you're kind of getting that A+ part of your recovery, where if you just did the carbohydrates and the fluids, it certainly is going to help you more than not doing anything. But it's probably like a B or a B-, if you're not including that protein. To get that protein, that's usually the harder part to get in there because it's not as portable. So when you finish your practice, you don't have access to like a chicken sandwich because you're like on the field yet, or you're still in the locker room. I think that some of you have maybe heard that chocolate milk's a great recovery drink, and that's because it has protein. Each 1 cup of chocolate milk would have about 8 grams of protein. So if you drink 2 cups of chocolate milk, which is probably about what most of you athletes drink out there, I can imagine, you're getting 16 grams of protein, which gets you to that protein amount, but you're probably at about 60 grams of carbohydrates, so maybe on the lower end of the carbohydrates end, but you're definitely meeting that protein part. So chocolate milk's a good recovery drink. Portable things, I have had people use dietary supplements if they're looking for convenience. They have sports bars out there, like a Cliff Bar is one brand. They have Snickers Marathon bars, Power bars. There's different ones. You are going to pay for the convenience of it though. Like they probably cost $1 or so per bar, where if you were able to do it with food, you're going to save a lot of money. Yogurt is another protein source that people can kind of get that protein part to hit that 10 to 25 gram window, and you can kind of do that, and it doesn't have to be as cold as maybe some meats. Peanut butter sandwich or something can be another protein, and getting those carbohydrates in that way. So what else I can think of for good examples that our athletes have used in the past. I know they're kind of like those meal replacement drinks, whether it's like an Ensure or a Slim Fast or a Boost drink. They have different nutrition drinks. Those are great because they don't have to be refrigerated. So if it's room temperature, well, it might taste better when it's cold. You can certainly drink it when it's room temperature, and if you're going to be drinking it kind of fast anyways, it's probably not that big a deal. I think it's important to kind of look at that label to try to see if that protein kind of falls in that range of 10 to 25 grams, and that those carbohydrates that you're going to get are going to fall in that range of 50 to 100 grams. So if you're drinking that Gatorade, you probably don't need as many extra carbohydrates as if you were drinking water. You need to make sure you get enough carbohydrates in there too. I would say the carbohydrates are the easiest part to get in because you can use animal cracker. They're kind of the most convenient carry-around food item that way. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you have an early morning practice, or if you're just a person that goes out and runs or something, what should you eat or do you have to do?
The question was, if you have an early morning practice or workout, do you need to eat something before you work out? When do you eat it? Can you eat the night before? Kind of how that would work. I would say ideally you would have a little something before. I do have kind of a general rule of thumb, so let's say you get up like a half hour before your workout. Usually your body can usually tolerate liquids just fine. So that might be when you want to try like a liquid meal replacement or something kind of liquid, because you can digest it a lot quicker. If you are the person that wakes up maybe 10 minutes before you start your workout and you just want to get up and go, if you're having a good nutrition throughout the day, every day, and you ate a good supper the night before, you are going to be fine to get through your workout. And you'd probably want to make sure you eat almost that good meal. You're basically eating your breakfast the night before you go to practice that next day. So it certainly can work if that's the way you are. But I do think you can train your body to tolerate something in the morning, whether it's a granola bar or something light. All right, any other questions? All right, well, thanks.